Imagine living in a world where a simple cut could become a death sentence, where the smell of entire cities hung permanently in the air, and where something as ordinary as washing your hands with soap simply didn't exist. Today we barely think about the bar of soap sitting beside our sink. Yet this humble invention has quietly transformed human history, helping prevent disease, extending life expectancy, and changing how civilizations viewed cleanliness. But the story of soap isn't just about hygiene, it's a story of accidental discoveries, forgotten knowledge, powerful empires, religious traditions, scientific breakthroughs, and one of humanity's longest quests to stay healthy. Our journey begins nearly 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Babylonians built some of the world's earliest cities. They developed writing, mathematics, and complex legal systems. Hidden among thousands of clay tablets discovered by archaeologists was something unexpected: one of the earliest known recipes for making soap. The recipe was surprisingly simple. Animal fats were heated together with wood ash and water, creating a thick, slippery substance through a chemical reaction that people did not yet understand. They weren't trying to invent a pleasant bathing product. Instead, this mixture was mainly used to clean wool before weaving, wash textiles, and treat certain skin conditions. Even without modern chemistry, they had discovered that combining fat with alkaline ash created a powerful cleaning agent. This was one of history's first examples of humans harnessing chemistry through observation rather than theory. They noticed what worked and repeated it, laying the foundation for thousands of years of soap making. As trade routes expanded across the ancient world, knowledge traveled alongside merchants carrying spices, metals, and precious fabrics. Soap-making techniques gradually spread to neighboring civilizations, each adapting the process to local resources. In ancient Egypt, cleanliness became deeply connected to religion and daily life. Priests serving inside magnificent temples washed themselves multiple times each day before performing sacred rituals. Purity was considered essential when approaching the gods. Egyptians blended animal and vegetable oils with naturally occurring alkaline salts known as natron, harvested from dry lake beds scattered across the desert. Beyond religious ceremonies, wealthy Egyptians also embraced scented oils and fragrant cleansing mixtures as symbols of status. Bathing became both practical and luxurious. Elaborate grooming routines filled royal palaces, while perfumes, cosmetics, and skin treatments reflected a culture that valued appearance alongside spiritual purity. Farther east, other civilizations developed their own cleansing traditions. Across different regions, people experimented with herbs, plant oils, clay, sand, and ash. Long before soap became common, humanity was constantly searching for better ways to remove dirt, protect skin, and maintain health. Then came one of history's greatest empires. As Rome expanded across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, it transformed public bathing into an enormous social institution. Massive bathhouses rose in cities across the empire. Some covered entire city blocks, featuring heated floors, hot baths, cold plunge pools, exercise courtyards, libraries, gardens, and meeting halls. Visiting the baths wasn't merely about getting clean. It was where people exercised, discussed politics, conducted business, relaxed, and built social connections. Ironically, despite Rome's obsession with bathing, soap itself played only a limited role in daily Roman hygiene. Instead, many Romans coated their skin with olive oil before scraping away dirt using a curved metal tool called a strigil. The process removed sweat, dust, and dead skin remarkably well, although it required time and skill. Soap was known within the empire, particularly in northern provinces influenced by Celtic and Germanic peoples, who produced thicker soaps from animal fat and wood ash. Some Roman writers even described these northern soaps as useful for coloring or styling hair rather than regular bathing. Still, the idea of combining oils and alkaline materials continued to spread across Europe through cultural exchange, conquest, and commerce. Although different societies used different methods, the underlying principle remained surprisingly consistent. Yet as powerful as Rome appeared, no empire lasts forever. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed during the 5th century, much of its infrastructure slowly deteriorated. Aqueducts crumbled, public bathhouses closed, trade networks weakened, and many urban centers declined. The sophisticated systems that had supported large populations became increasingly difficult to maintain. The disappearance of public bathing wasn't immediate, nor was cleanliness completely abandoned. But in many parts of Europe, access to large bathing facilities declined dramatically over the following centuries. Local traditions survived in some regions, while others gradually faded as political instability reshaped everyday life. Soap itself did not disappear from history, but its journey was about to enter an entirely new chapter, where innovation would come from unexpected places and transform this ancient invention into something far more powerful than anyone before could have imagined. While much of Western Europe struggled through political fragmentation after the fall of Rome, another part of the world was entering a remarkable age of scientific discovery and innovation. Across the rapidly expanding Islamic world, cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, and Aleppo became centers of learning where scholars preserved ancient knowledge while pushing it even further. Soap making was one of the many crafts that flourished during this period. Unlike the rough, animal fat soaps of earlier civilizations, skilled artisans in cities such as Nablus, Aleppo, and Kufa began producing harder, finer soaps using high-quality olive oil, sesame oil, and laurel oil. These ingredients created bars that were gentler on the skin, longer-lasting, and far more pleasant to use. The techniques became increasingly sophisticated, with carefully controlled heating, filtering, and curing processes that produced soap of consistent quality. Among the most famous was Aleppo soap, produced in what is now Syria. Made primarily from olive oil and enriched with fragrant laurel berry oil, it was cured for months before reaching the marketplace. Its distinctive green interior and golden brown exterior became symbols of craftsmanship, and merchants carried it across the Mediterranean to distant ports. Soap was no longer simply a household necessity. It had become an international commodity. Bustling markets displayed neatly stacked bars beside spices, silk, perfumes, and glassware. Caravans transported soap across deserts, while merchant ships carried it between continents. Demand grew because people recognized not only its cleaning ability, but also its value in textile production, medicine, and personal care. The importance of cleanliness was reinforced by religious practice. Ritual washing before daily prayers encouraged regular bathing and hand-washing, creating steady demand for quality soap throughout the Islamic world. Public bathhouses, known as hammams, became social and cultural landmarks where people gathered to bathe, relax, and conduct business, much as Roman baths had centuries earlier. These advances did not remain isolated. As trade intensified between the Islamic world and Europe, merchants introduced superior soap-making methods to ports along the Mediterranean. Cities in Italy, Spain, and southern France eagerly adopted these techniques, establishing their own workshops and adapting recipes to local ingredients. One city would become especially famous. Marseille, on the southern coast of France, emerged as one of Europe's greatest soap-producing centers. Surrounded by abundant olive groves and connected to thriving Mediterranean trade routes, its manufacturers perfected large-scale production using pure vegetable oils. Over time, Marseille soap became known for its exceptional quality and purity, earning a reputation that survives even today. Farther west, Spain also developed a renowned soap industry. In Castile, soap makers relied almost entirely on olive oil rather than animal fats, producing an especially mild and luxurious product. Castile soap became highly prized throughout Europe and remains one of the world's most recognizable traditional soaps centuries later. But despite these advances, everyday hygiene in medieval Europe remained inconsistent. Many people still bathed infrequently, not because they disliked cleanliness, but because access to hot water, public baths, and quality soap varied enormously depending on wealth, geography, and local customs. Rural families often made simple homemade soaps, using leftover animal fat and wood ash, while wealthier households purchased refined soaps imported from major trading cities. Then another turning point arrived. During the 14th century, the Black Death swept across Europe, killing tens of millions of people. At the time, no one understood that bacteria and viruses caused disease. Many believed illness spread through foul air, divine punishment, or mysterious cosmic influences. Soap alone could never have stopped the plague. Yet the devastation forced societies to reconsider sanitation, waste disposal, and public health. Over the centuries that followed, physicians, governments, and city planners slowly began paying greater attention to cleanliness, even if they did not yet understand why it mattered. Ironically, new misconceptions also appeared. In some periods, especially during the Renaissance and into the 17th century, parts of Europe's upper classes became wary of frequent bathing. Some physicians believed hot water opened the pores and allowed disease to enter the body. Instead of washing regularly, many wealthy people relied on perfumes, powders, and clean linen to mask odors. For ordinary people, however, practical soap making never disappeared. Families continued passing recipes from one generation to the next, rendering animal fat, collecting hardwood ash, and carefully boiling the mixture in large iron pots. It was difficult, messy work that required patience and experience. Too much ash ruined the batch. Too little produced a greasy paste that barely cleaned at all. Even without formal scientific knowledge, generations of soap makers had mastered the process through trial and error. What they could not yet explain was the invisible chemistry taking place inside those steaming kettles. That explanation, and the revolution it would unleash, would arrive with the birth of modern science and the Industrial Revolution, transforming soap from a handcrafted luxury into one of the most important everyday products the world had ever known. By the 18th century, the world was changing faster than ever before. Factories were replacing workshops, cities were expanding at an unprecedented rate, and millions of people were leaving rural villages in search of work. But rapid industrialization came with a hidden cost. Crowded streets, polluted rivers, overflowing waste, and poor sanitation created the perfect conditions for disease to spread through growing urban populations. Soap was no longer just a convenience, it was becoming a necessity. Yet making soap was still expensive. Governments across Europe taxed it heavily, treating it as a luxury rather than an essential household item. In countries like England, soap taxes drove up prices for decades, limiting access for ordinary families. Many continued making crude soap at home, while refined bars remained affordable mainly to the wealthy. Everything changed with advances in chemistry. In 1791, French chemist Nicolas Leblanc developed a process for producing sodium carbonate from common salt. This breakthrough provided soap makers with a reliable and inexpensive source of alkali, one of the key ingredients in soap production. Although the Leblanc process had environmental drawbacks, it marked the beginning of industrial-scale soap manufacturing. Soon after, another scientific breakthrough explained what soap makers had unknowingly practiced for thousands of years. Chemists identified the process now known as saponification, the reaction between fats or oils and an alkali that creates soap and glycerin. For the first time, manufacturers understood the science behind their craft, instead of relying solely on tradition and experience. Recipes became more consistent, production more efficient, and quality far more reliable. But perhaps the greatest turning point in the history of soap came not from chemistry alone, it came from medicine. In the mid-19th century, Hungarian physician Ignác Semmelweis made a disturbing observation. In one maternity clinic, women treated by doctors were dying from childbed fever far more often than those treated by midwives. Semmelweis suspected that doctors were unknowingly carrying infectious material from autopsies to patients. He ordered physicians to wash their hands with a chlorinated solution before examining mothers. The results were astonishing. Death rates dropped dramatically. Yet many of his colleagues rejected the idea. They could not believe that invisible particles on clean-looking hands could kill. Semmelweis was ridiculed, dismissed, and his discoveries were largely ignored during his lifetime. Only years later did the work of scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch confirm the existence of microorganisms. Germ theory transformed medicine forever. Suddenly, hand-washing with soap was no longer simply about removing visible dirt. It became one of humanity's most powerful defenses against invisible disease. Hospitals adopted strict hygiene practices. Surgeons washed before operations. Public health campaigns encouraged families to wash their hands regularly. Schools began teaching children the importance of cleanliness. Something as simple as soap became one of the most effective tools ever developed for preventing illness. At the same time, the business of soap exploded. Companies competed to produce better, cheaper, and more appealing products. Factories used steam-powered machinery, to manufacture millions of bars every year. New fragrances, colors, and ingredients appeared, while advances in packaging transformed soap from a basic household supply into a recognizable consumer product. Advertising changed everything again. Instead of merely selling cleanliness, companies began selling beauty, freshness, health, and modern living. Illustrated posters filled city streets. Newspaper advertisements promised softer skin and happier families. Later, radio and television commercials brought soap into homes around the world, turning familiar brands into household names. As the 20th century progressed, scientific research led to new synthetic detergents that performed better in hard water and specialized products for different purposes. Liquid soaps, antibacterial formulations, moisturizing cleansers, and environmentally friendly alternatives expanded the market even further. What had once been a rough mixture of animal fat and ash had evolved into thousands of carefully engineered products. Yet despite all this innovation, the fundamental principle remained remarkably unchanged. Every bar of soap still works because one end of each soap molecule is attracted to water, while the other is attracted to oils and grease. When you wash your hands, those molecules surround dirt, oils, and many microbes, allowing water to carry them safely away. It is an elegant piece of chemistry that connects modern science directly to discoveries first made thousands of years ago. Today, billions of people use soap every single day without giving it a second thought. It sits quietly beside kitchen sinks, bathroom basins, showers, hospitals, schools, factories, and restaurants across the globe. It is inexpensive, ordinary, and often overlooked. But behind that ordinary bar lies an extraordinary story. From the clay tablets of ancient Babylon to the temples of Egypt, from the bathhouses of Rome to the bustling markets of Aleppo, from medieval workshops to steam-powered factories, soap has traveled through nearly every chapter of human civilization. Empires rose and fell. Religions shaped rituals. Scientists challenged accepted beliefs. Inventors refined ancient techniques. Doctors fought invisible enemies. And through it all, one simple invention quietly improved the lives of billions. History is often told through kings, wars, and revolutions. But sometimes the greatest changes come from the smallest objects. A bar of soap never conquered an empire or ruled a kingdom. Yet it has saved countless lives, transformed public health, and changed the daily habits of humanity more profoundly than almost any other invention. The next time you wash your hands, you'll be holding the result of nearly 5,000 years of human curiosity, experimentation, and progress. A reminder that even the simplest things can carry the most remarkable histories.